serving as an evolution of the traditional scout ship in Starfleet, being larger, faster, longer ranged, and more capable than any ship which had come before in her designation. The Hermes class would be something of a disappointment in service due to a number of factors, many of which were due to the somewhat dubious role envisioned for the ship even before she was laid down. The class measured in at 242 meters long, was 127 meters wide and 60 meters tall, with an armament of 3 single phaser banks and a forward probe launcher, which could fire the new photon torpedoes once they entered service, albeit with a limited number of torpedoes carried and glacially slow rate of fire, making them suitable for only defensive use. The ship also had a crew of roughly 150, and embarked a pair of shuttlecraft and single shuttle pod in a small hangar. The class could manage speeds as high as warp factor 8 and had a cruising speed of warp factor 6. The Hermes class was built with 6 months of consumables aboard, double that of a typical scout despite her much larger crew. Traditionally, the scout ship in Starfleet had been something of a misnomer, with the scout ship being used most often internally within the Federation for duties such as messenger and transport, law enforcement, border patrol, anti-smuggling, and training missions, rather than the trailblazing high-speed exploration, which may come to mind when you hear the term scout. Scouts had initially been intended to perform such missions. However, the first scouts had proven to be too small for effective use in such roles, but were found to be cheap and economical to operate within Federation space on less important missions, which would allow for larger cruisers to be freed up for use in more important roles. And this paradigm would last for nearly 50 years, cruisers being deployed to the periphery of the Federation, scouts being used internally, until the 2230s. This policy had begun to shift shortly before the outbreak of the 4 Years' War in 2241, with Starfleet producing a small number of a new enlarged scout class, the Nelson, to replace larger cruisers in exploring and expanding the frontiers of the Federation. Production of this class being heavily impacted during the war, though the Nelson would see significant service during the conflict, acting as an adjunct to the fleet, scouting for the enemy far ahead, and similar tasks. After the war, Starfleet would return to this large scout concept, also producing its final traditional scout, the Archer class. But with the experience of the war showing that the lightly armed Nelson had no place in the battle line, Starfleet would further split the scouting role, spinning off the battle line role off into the destroyer, the first example of which would be the Saladin class, which was closely related to the first post-war large scout, the Hermes. Using the same basic hull, the same nacelle and reactor, similar shields, but differing in the outfit of sensors, computers, and processing nodes, as well as armament, the two designs would appear very similar to one another at a glance, with the major differences being under the skin or else requiring an observer to be much closer to the vessel to distinguish which of the two variants he was looking at. The first ship of this new enlarged scout, the USS Hermes, would complete her trials in 2252, with full production beginning after the ship's launch, meaning that larger numbers would be in service as early as 2254. In service, the Hermes would be found to be a useful, though underarmed and overly expensive luxury for the capability which it provided. Most commanders preferred a cruiser to perform the exploratory missions for which the Hermes was designed, understandable given the increasing tensions of the day, one of the new destroyers for the patrol missions which the ship was built to perform, and a more traditional scout for most other missions. Some of this was not due to the Hermes' design any fault, but rather due to changing galactic conditions which made such a lightly armed, lightly built design very vulnerable anywhere but inside the Federation. In the end, 32 of the class would be built, with a final planned 32 ships being converted well under construction into Saladin-class destroyers. The ships would be mostly assigned to the Third Fleet, which at the time was deployed coreward in the opposite direction to the Klingon and Romulan empires, along the Vulcan frontier. This lower threat environment meant that the ships would have quiet careers, with the greatest threats that the class would be expected to deal with being Orion and Nausicaan pirates, and the occasional smuggler. The Hermes class would carry on in this calm service until the 2290s, largely passed by, when the Khitomer Treaty would call for their removal from service and scrapping as part of the aim of diminishing Starfleet as tensions with the Klingons eased. The last member of the class, the USS Leander, would continue on as a target vessel until 2307, when she was transferred to the Fleet Museum to become an exhibit in orbit of the world of high species in Vulcan space. While the Hermes class represented something of a failed experiment for Starfleet, the class should not be remembered as a failure once in service, providing the Federation with decades of acceptable, if not outstanding, service in an oft-neglected but still important part of the Federation. The ship's failures in service was due in no part to its design, which was generally seen as very robust, and shared many parts in common with the highly successful and well-regarded Saladin, circumstances meaning that this well-built ship was never able to prove itself in the missions for which it had been designed, and you cannot fault the ship for its circumstances once in service. Thank you for watching this video. In case you didn't see, the channel recently reached a milestone of 1,500 subscribers. That is awesome. We're at like 15,700 now. So thanks so much to everybody who has followed and subscribed. We are running a bit of a contest right now. If you enter a fanship's history that you like with a comment down below, you stand to get something of a prize. It's kind of a tacky Quarks Bars themed glass, but I would gladly drink out of that until the markings went away, and then I would keep it somewhere because I wanted to keep it in an acceptable state where you could see what it is. But, you know, I would definitely use that mug because it looks cool. There might be a picture of it, or there might not be. Ooh. Anyway, yeah, that contest ends in about a week, so feel free to enter. Yeah. I think that's everything. I mean, let's see. Where's my notes? Yep. Thanks for the 1,500 subscribers. Get milk, bread, grocery list. Let's see. Contest. Yep, that's it. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching, for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.